Today we're talking about how Muscovy ducks hatch out their eggs and what you have to do as a duck owner. Hi guys, I'm Elissa at Moat Cottage Homesteading. We're a small space backyard homestead. As a duck owner, you have to provide a safe location for your ducks so that they're not going to be taken by predators, the same with their eggs and any babies that hatch out. You need to provide a clean living environment so that your ducks aren't walking around in poop, therefore walking it into their nesting area and onto their eggs with their big dirty feet. If you have access to straw or wood chips, then you can spread it out all over the ground. So then you can create a deep litter flooring system, and this is a great solution for keeping your poultry coop clean. You want a safe, clean location for your ducks to lay, hatch out and raise their babies. If eggs are dirty with poop and mud, then this can increase the bacteria getting into the eggs through the shell, and this will decrease your hatch rate. Now, that doesn't mean you go and wash your eggs if they're dirty, because they have a protective layer around the outside, and if you wash it off, then you'll have more chance of the bacteria getting in for sure. If you do see a really mucky egg, then you might want to remove it from the nest. But this is before the mama starts sitting on the eggs full time. After that, just leave them, let the mama work out what she's doing and which eggs she wants to nest on. If you provide a clean living environment for your birds, then this shouldn't be a problem. You're going to need a viable drake in your flock so that he can get down to business and fertilise the eggs. Now, a duck will still sit on eggs even if they're not fertile, but they're not going to grow babies. They're just going to get really rotten. So you need to have a viable drake. Your duck will choose a location where she wants to lay her eggs, and then she'll start to prepare the nest. She does this by making an indentation where she wants the nest. So whether it's in the soil, the grass, whether it's in the wood chips or the sawdust that you've organised for her, she will make this indentation, and then she'll pull out some down feathers to line the nest with the down feathers so it's nice and soft and well insulated. Some ducks use these feathers to cover their eggs and hide them, but not all ducks do this. She'll usually lay an egg in her nest every day. Sometimes they miss a day, but generally it's every day until she has enough eggs, and you just have to leave the eggs there undisturbed. So while these eggs are waiting for all the eggs to be laid, nothing's happening, they're just normal eggs. She'll decide when she's got enough eggs and she wants to sit on them full time. So be patient. Sometimes they can be up to 20 eggs, but generally I find about 10 to 12 eggs is a good number that the mum likes to sit on. So when she decides she's ready, she'll quietly sit on her eggs. No noise, no fuss, just quietly sitting there nice and still. And then when she starts sitting on them full time, that's when incubation starts. So that's when the 35 days starts, and write that date down so you know when to expect them to hatch. So leave her there undisturbed for 35 days so that she can just hatch out her eggs in peace. Of course, if you're a backyard duck owner, they're used to you being around, so you can check on them and just peek in and see if she's okay. She'll usually come off her nest for a period of time every day, and you can tell when a broody hen is off her nest because she comes out and she's all puffy, her feathers are all puffed up, and she makes a fair bit of noise, which is not normal for Muscovy ducks. They're fairly quiet birds, so you know when a Muscovy duck's off her nest because she's quite cranky and she takes it out on anyone who will listen. So everybody knows about it. She'll come off and she'll do a great big stinky poop that she's saved up because they don't poop in their nest, which is good for the eggs because obviously you don't want poop in the nest. She'll have a drink of water and a feed, and quite often she might even take a bath as well. They love their baths. A broody duck can come off the nest at any time of day, whatever suits her, and it's not necessarily when you're feeding the ducks. So what I do is I have a container especially for the broody ducks when they come out, and it's got grain in it and it's covered in water. So the ducks have to put their beaks in, they know it's there, and they can pull the grain out whenever it suits them, and that means the mice and the wild birds can't get the grain. And Muscovy ducks prefer to eat greens, bugs, and all sorts of things that they can find in the garden. They'd rather that than grain anyway, so if they've already had enough grain, they're not going to overfeed. They're not like that. So leaving extra out for a broody hen is quite easy to do. And if I'm putting duck feed into the water, it's obviously only grain. I don't do this with layer pellets or anything that's going to go mushy and disgusting. I only do this with whole grains. And if there's no food left for her, she will come and get you. Obviously, I've got backyard Muscovy ducks, so they know where they can come to find me, and they do. They make a lot of noise and say, hey, I'm off my nest now. I'm announcing it to everyone in the whole neighbourhood, and you better come and feed me. So you'll hear her if you're in the house and they're around your house. You'll hear them when they're coming off the nest. If her nest is in an area where other ducks can get to it, what I do in the early days when she comes off her nest is I mark the eggs with a bit of black texture. That way I know which ones are her eggs that she is going to be sitting on for the 35 days. And if any extra eggs appear in that time along the journey, I know that they're not the ones that should be there. Sometimes I will check the nest and make sure there's no extra eggs there, because we don't need half-developed birds in eggs. When the eggs are under a broody bird, I don't bother candling the eggs. I just leave them. There's no point. Let the mum do what the mum does. If I was incubating the eggs in an incubator, then I would definitely be candling the eggs. But under a broody bird, I just let them do their thing. Where I live in Victoria, Australia, my ducks hatch out their eggs anywhere from mid-winter all the way through to the start of autumn. But obviously this is going to depend where in the world you are as to the seasons when your ducks are going to be wanting to hatch out eggs. My ducks generally don't start sitting in the autumn. They're usually molting in the autumn, so when the leaves are falling off the trees, the feathers start falling off the ducks, and then they all have brand new coats ready for the winter. On day 34, I go and check on Mum. I don't disturb her, but I do have a listen and see if I can hear any little chicks under there, and sometimes I see a little face pop out. Because it gets so hot here, usually they hatch a day early, or at least they start to hatch a day early. Now I don't disturb her. The mum will stay on the nest for a couple of days after this usually as well. And she'll come off when she's ready. You need to make sure that the babies have access to water that they can reach and that they can get in and out of without drowning. Because if the water's too deep and they can't get out of it, they'll get tired swimming in there all that time and they will drown. So you need to make sure they have access suitable for their size. And the same goes for food. They need to be able to reach their food, not be able to tip it over, and that includes mum stepping in it. And you need to make sure that the babies aren't pooping in it, because there's always those ducklings that like to get in their food and make a big mess. And you don't want them eating that, because that'd be really disgusting. I like to feed my ducklings and mama duck with a starter mix for ducklings and geese. Now I don't use the one for chickens because it's too much medicated formula in that for the ducks, so I have a special one especially for ducks. I also give them access to shell grit because that's how they digest their food. It helps them to break down any food that they find. Obviously the starter crumble isn't going to be needing that, but any other food that they happen to find. I also give them access to coal because if they're not feeling well, they will peck on the coal and that will help settle their tummy. As well as access to greens because they love their fresh greens. If there's any eggs left over that haven't hatched when the mama comes off the nest, I carefully crack them open to see what has happened, whether they were fertile in the first place or whether the bird has died along the way and whereabouts in the journey the bird did die, because then that can tell you a lot about what the problem was. So I always like to know what's going on and how many of my eggs were fertilised and if any aren't making it through. Usually I have a fairly high success rate. Of course I do this outside because if it's an unfertile egg or it's been dead for a while, it's going to be a really stinky mess. So you've got to be prepared for that if you're going to do that. And make sure you don't get it on yourself because it can stink for days. If you choose to breed your ducks, then you are responsible for their health and well-being. You're also responsible for the excess drakes that you're going to end up with. Because once you have a whole lot of teenage drakes, that's going to cause a bit of trouble because they're going to be harassing all the ladies, whether they're chickens or ducks. They're not that fussy and they're not very respectful of the ladies. I suppose because there's too many of them usually when you're hatching out and you've got quite a few. If you've only got the two main drakes or one drake, then there's no competition and they're quite happy to share and do what they need to do. But if there's a whole lot of teenagers, it gets a little bit crazy. It's, yeah, something you need to manage. Also, the drakes will start fighting with them and it gets out of control very quickly. So you need to make sure you can look after them properly, and that means your whole flock as a whole. And you need to respectfully process those drakes, or you can rehome them. It's up to you how you choose to manage your flock, but you need to be aware of that is your responsibility. Letting them out into the wild is not an option because they can become a pest in so many areas around the world. And that's not a responsible pet owner thing to do. So take that into consideration before you hatch out any eggs, that it's your responsibility to manage what you do breed. And if you can't do that, then just collect the eggs every day. If you'd like to learn more about Muscovy ducks, then check out my Muscovy Duck playlist. And if you have any further questions or comments, then leave them below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.